And I also didn't clear. Excellent.
Um, yeah, but we can go ahead and get started. Uh, so yeah, welcome everyone to the July iteration of the NNIP Idea Showcases. For those who this is their first time, the general way we go through these is we start with a few updates from the network, upcoming events and publications, and then we go into each speaker. And to make sure we have enough time, each speaker will get about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll have a few minutes after, like five or so, for questions, and that should get us up on time. So yeah, I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. And yeah, Kathy, do you want to go through the updates?
Sure, I can.
Okay. Sorry, I
You want to,
couldn't
yeah.
get rid of the transition for these, but there you go.
Great. Yes, as I mentioned, we have one more event this summer that I encourage you to attend or have folks invite your other staff people who are either new to NNIP, either new to your organization, or just hasn't been that involved in NNIP. So Gabby and Cole will have a welcome webinar with like the NNIP 101 work and a chance for new people to get to know each other too. So I encourage folks to do that. And then we have two September events. We're still settling on the date. Our amazing colleague, Will Curran Groom, has done a set of our packages that are really exciting. One aggregating ACS data, one on geographic crosswalks, and one on estimating building units for parcel data when you only have a range. So I know that sounds very in the weeds, but I think they're just very practical for a bunch of things NNIP partners have to do all the time. So he's going to present on those new packages. And then I am working on scheduling a Birds of a Feather session on food security and access to healthy food, which has been bubbling up. I see lots of examples around that I've been collecting, but we haven't really talked about as a group. So just to get everybody together informally on that. And then, which we didn't put, oh yes, and register if you plan to go to the October meeting, please register. We are getting a very high response rate from partners. So we're most concerned about the hotel room book. So, and last year when our hotel block got filled in Charlotte, the hotel tried to charge people like $550 a night. So that's what we're trying to avoid. So please register and book your hotel early so we can see if we need to expand our hotel block. We'd like to think we're really popular, but we think New Orleans might be a draw. Next. And just to note, Cole and I have been working on a bunch of publications. One with Katie Pritchard on building data capacity, sort of laying out how we think about community data capacity and thinking about being more strategic, which there'll be a session in October also. Cole already actually wrote the help desk summary based on how everybody handles help desks. But we haven't made it public yet, so we'll add that. Cole and Jay Dev, a friend of the network, are also writing a guide to data days based on the amazing work of Columbus, Hartford, Baltimore, and many others. And we're working our way through the impact story blog. So everyone who submitted it for the NNIP Impact Award, we do write those up as blogs since they're all great examples, and more of those will be coming out over the next few months. I think that's all. Yep. I'll turn it over to you, Cole.
Thank you. And I realized I forgot to introduce myself for those who don't know me earlier, but yeah, my name's Cole Campbell. I'm a research analyst at the Urban Institute, and I'm one of the team members of NNIP Urban here. So yeah, I want to give a shout out and introduce our speakers for today. We have four total across three different presentations. But first we have Kailas Venkita from the Charlotte Urban Institute, who'll be talking about the discussing more the wealth lens and perspective to economic mobility as opposed to income in the Charlotte region. We also have Amador Castro from the Institute for Housing Studies in Chicago. He'll be talking about mapping vacant land in Chicago and talking about the barriers that exist currently to redevelopment and community investment strategies. And then finally, we'll have two speakers from CT Data Collaborative in Hartford, Kate Eichel and Jill Walsh. We'll be talking about the recent work that the Youth Data Fellowship has been doing on sports and recreation in Hartford. So with that, I will turn over to
Fantastic lineup.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'll turn over to our first speaker, Kailas. Can share the screen.
Thank you, Cole. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, so I just wanted to take some time to kind of introduce you to some exciting new research that is happening at a national level and what we are doing in the Charlotte region as a derivative of that research, and also kind of introduce you or give a sneak peek to a research tool that allows you to extend that work to your own region based on the framework that we have developed, and also kind of deriving new works out of it. This is about economic mobility, and as you might know, in 2014 there is this infamous and really distinction for Charlotte, which became 50 out of the 50 ranking top metros that we ranked the lowest for economic mobility based on income. So Raj Chetty and colleagues mapped intergenerational income mobility across every major US metro from decades of tax records. And we found that a child born in Charlotte's bottom income fifth had about like a 1 in 14 chance of reaching the top fifth. And that basically created a flurry of policy conversations, investments in multiple different dimensions, all targeting income. So, income was, we were like trying to scramble and find policy levers that'll affect income growth and opportunities for people to have better jobs and better schooling opportunities and so on. So that was basically the context. And since then, Charlotte has been at the forefront of actually addressing this issue. But now there is this new study that has come out by Binder, Risch, and Voorhees on, it's called The Geography of Wealth Mobility. It's called The Lands of Opportunity. It's an NBER working paper. Just like the Raj Chetty study, it also kind of uses 3.4 million families and their census, tax, and property records, and link those administrative records to estimate mobility for every US county across 5 economic concepts. So it's basically shifting the focus from just a singular point of measurement, income, into other measurements: labor income, home ownership, housing wealth, and total wealth. So it basically produced data for the first time so that we can ask, does wealth mobility look like income mobility, or how it is different, and so on. So this piqued my curiosity when I read the paper first, obviously, about the Charlotte region, and that started this project to begin with. So just to give you some context on these measurements before I go further, there is this concept called absolute mobility, called alpha. That is basically the green dot that you see on the screen, is where a bottom earner or somebody who has the lowest wealth, where they end up. And in Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is, they land at the 23rd income percentile. The national median is 34th income percentile. Ours is much lower. The second measurement, which is called the relative mobility, it's called the beta, it basically measures the persistence on how hard or how easy it is for somebody who has grown up in a family with low wealth, who had poor parents, to actually make it up on top. So this beta, the slope, as it actually increases, that actually tells us that the wealth mobility or income mobility is more rigid. So higher is actually generally not so good. So the beta for Charlotte is 0.43. But when we take the wealth aspect of it, the beta actually goes to 0.51. It tells us, the paper tells us that the wealth mobility is significantly rigid, more than the income mobility suggests. So we again are back to square one in many ways that, in terms of wealth, the inheritance seems to be much more of a factor in Charlotte, in our region, than before. So, and basically the gap between the two betas is basically what I call as the wealth and income gap. And that basically started a working paper that I'm still working on, that actually puts a focus on this concept. So this is just to illustrate what I'm talking about here. So if you look at those two dots, on the blue dot is somebody whose parents are poor, and at the 15th percentile, and the red dot is somebody who has a rich parent, 85th percentile. So in a fair world, or when the beta is zero, they both have the same rank. The children have the same rank in terms of where they stand with their wealth or with their income. But if I kind of shift it and the beta becomes positive, that particular graph will see that somebody whose child who had a poor parent kind of fares lower, and somebody who had a rich parent fares higher in terms of where they stand when they become an adult and a middle-aged person. So that is how the beta, this is just for illustration, whatever I was talking about in the earlier slide. So why are they different? Most of you will know that income is a flow that basically comes and goes. It rises and falls, and wealth is basically a stock that compounds. It has many structural reasons on why wealth continues to be concentrated. All the factors, historical factors that has contributed to what we are seeing today in the wealth inequality in this country, all affects this. And what this paper is saying is that it is actually a much more significant factor in determining a person's economic outcomes in the future. So, and just to continue this conversation, so in this study, we saw that while the nation's wealth mobility is slightly better than income mobility, it actually reverses for Mecklenburg County, that we have a gap. Wealth mobility is worse than income mobility. And in terms of housing wealth, we are at the 99.6 percentile. So we are worse than almost every county in the US in terms of wealth mobility. And we join the ranks of many other Sunbelt cities, boom towns with very active housing markets. Atlanta, Nashville, Austin, Raleigh, they are all pretty poor, and are where we are seeing that the housing market is concentrating the wealth rather than spreading it. And I expanded the study, and this is basically the focus of the working paper, is to the 14-county region that the Charlotte Urban Institute serves. And we saw that this is basically a mixed bag across the county, but it's not like a clear urban-rural story either. But we are seeing some rural counties also have significant rigidity with respect to wealth mobility than income mobility. As well. I'll just move quickly through this, and I'll talk about more of this when we have question and answers. The general punchline here is that almost all of the counties in this 14-county region are in the red. So they are all kind of below the median, the national median. So that basically says that as a region, we are doing really poorly in terms of wealth mobility across the multiple concepts that we have. So when I started doing this, I was also curious about other metros and wanted to kind of figure out how we can compare across metros and so on. And that's how I started developing a research companion for this. a tool that allows anyone to actually look at the numbers for their own metros. So that's what I created here, called the Economic Mobility Explorer. It's a fledgling kind of tool, but it actually gives you the whole information that the source data provides. And I'll just show you the features of this. So this tool allows us to compare your county with other counties across all these 5 different concepts, and to see where income and wealth diverge locally. It also allows you to generate like a metro report, a shareable page of 53 major metros and their percentiles and so on. And you can also kind of download your county estimates to in your own dashboards and so on. And you can use it for like sharing a live view of it and so on. So I'll just shift this conversation to the tool itself. So this is basically the main interface. And when you hover through it, you can actually see, say, for example, I'll just take any random county. It allows you to actually bring up a tooltip that shows what a given mobility measure is. In this case, I've chosen absolute mobility, and it shows you where that county stands and where the national median is, and the state average, and the county itself. So then I can sift through the different metrics here and also the concepts. So for each of the 5 different concepts, there are 3 metrics that the paper generates, and all of them are available here for exploration. So you can say, I can just go to North Carolina, and it zooms into North Carolina, and you can see all the counties, and then you can explore it based on the state. Or if I want to generate like a report, then I can say Charlotte, I can start Charlotte, and it focuses on the Charlotte metro area, and you can click on View Report, and it gives you a more curated kind of set of charts for the metro area itself. So this is and it also gives you like a table that you can kind of bring into. And for the metro averages, these are all population weighted averages that is being created here for fair comparisons. So this is, let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, and there's a user guide that allows you to navigate through the different functions and how you can explore wealth-based mobility in your own metro area. And there's also links here for the foundational paper, for the NBER paper, and also the working paper for the Charlotte region. And if you find that interesting, or can use as a framework for analyzing your own data in your own region, you can use that. So the underlying data is publicly available in the census website. I believe it is the link is there somewhere. But that is a very, very breezy sneak peek on this. I'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions or any clarifications, or we can go back on any of the slides to discuss more.
And are you ready, Kailas, for us, like if we wanted to help make this, are you publicizing it? Like
Yeah,
through
this is
LinkedIn,
all
do
of
you
this.
want, are you ready for prime time?
All of this is public already. So yeah, and the working paper is published as well. Yeah, so this can be shared widely.
Great.
One question. Like the Chetty paper, though, this reflects a period in time.
Yeah, so this takes data from children who are born between 1978 and 1986. and they look at their incomes in 2020 and their parents' incomes in the year 2000. So the average parent's age is some 46 in the data, and the average child age is between 30s and 40s.
But so it doesn't reflect the county's current
Yeah.
ability.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. It's really nice looking though.
I had a question, Kylas, because we were talking, we had a session at the meeting last year in Charlotte about what the city and the region's response was to, this original finding from Raj Chetty. So I don't know if you have a sense of this or if there's any conversations happening, but I'm wondering how the approach to, even worse mobility when it comes to wealth, how that would differ, like responding to that, and trying to improve it, how that would differ from, income mobility.
Yeah, I'm as curious as you because this data is still not like hasn't percolated in the local circles yet. So I'm also wondering what that response might be. We have seen programs in other places like baby bonds and so on being adopted, and North Carolina has not done anything similar to those measures at this point. But certainly, the city will have to learn from the best practices in other areas and have to take a hard look at this based on this new data, I feel. But it is at this point, I also want to, since Haley is also here, this effort is complementary to some of the other work that we are working, collaborating with the data center and data you can use in Milwaukee on creating credible local wealth estimates. And that effort is going in parallel. So again, at a very granular level. So we'll be able to hopefully look into this data a little bit more deeply and try to give the local and regional policymakers a much more nuanced view of what is happening and why and where it is happening. And that I hope will set the stage for those conversations. But yeah, great question.
Okay. Any other questions for Kylas? If not, thank you so much for presenting. Yeah, this is really cool. Looking tool.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we can move on to Amador.
Thank you, Cole. Let me share I'm going to start sharing my screen. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amador Castro. I'm just making sure everybody can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it. You're good.
Okay, thank you. I said good afternoon. My name is Amador Castro, and I am a research and policy analyst with the Institute for Housing Studies at DePaul University in Chicago. Just a little bit of background on IHS for anyone who's not familiar. IHS is a research center that provides analysis and data to inform affordable housing policy and practice through an applied research model that includes data collection and improvement of data, as well as technical assistance. So regarding today's presentation focuses on IHS's data analysis and mapping of vacant land in Chicago and the area to identify barriers to redevelopment and support community investment strategies. So Chicago has an abundance of vacant land. This large inventory of vacant parcels is a direct product of the city's history of disinvestment and uneven patterns of investment. These vacant parcels are highly concentrated throughout the city's south and west sides, and they also vary in type of ownership, zoning classification, land use categories, and other physical characteristics like size. So some of the community impacts of long-standing vacant parcels include negative effects on nearby property values, exposure to environmental hazards, negative effects on mental health, physical activity, and social cohesion. So why and how do we use data to support equitable redevelopment of vacant parcels? The recent interest in equitable redevelopment or repurposing of vacant parcels in Chicago has prompted the demand for data support. Therefore, IHS has developed partnerships with local organizations and agencies to assist the revitalization of vacant land. IHS property level data has facilitated the knowledge building and analysis of vacant parcels. An important way of doing this has been through the implementation of indicators of potential development of parcels by using proximity to transit, zoning analysis, and the housing market conditions around the vacant lots or near the vacant lots. So here's a look at Chicago's volume and distribution of vacant parcels throughout the city. Currently, there are approximately near just over 39,000 vacant parcels in the city, which accounts for nearly 4% of all the parcels in the city. To add a bit more context to these numbers and uneven spatial distribution, Chicago has 77 recognized community areas, and just over half or close to 52% of these vacant parcels, of the citywide vacant parcels, are concentrated in only 10 community areas. In addition, these 10 community areas are predominantly Black and lower income areas. Just to add a bit more context to like I said, the spatial patterns and where they're located. So here are some paths and challenges for redevelopment of vacant land. Redevelopment or repurposing of vacant parcels may include housing or redevelopment of new housing, commercial mixed-use buildings, or green spaces and other community-centered priority spaces. Redevelopment or repurposing of vacant land also faces a number of challenges. One of the main ones, or I listed 3 here, but there are many others, is the fragmentation of ownership type. Currently, more than 3/4, close to 78% of the citywide vacant parcels are privately owned. The rest are either city-owned or owned by another public agency, such as the Chicago Housing Authority or the Cook County Land Bank. Zoning classification is another hurdle for redevelopment. Potential rezoning for redevelopment requires zoning map amendments, which is basically rezoning or upzoning each parcel. And that goes through a whole process of start at the aldermanic level and moves on through another agency and has to be full city approved or approved by the city council, which could be a lengthy process, and there might be some opposition as well. In addition, there can be debt attached to the vacant properties, which can become a financial barrier for redevelopers, or folks who might want to build new housing or redeveloping existing vacant parcels. And this might be due to delinquent property taxes or outstanding water debt on property. So to help and assist stakeholders better understand geographic and administrative challenges and differences by providing information that supports strategic planning and community-driven redevelopment efforts, IHS has developed vacant land analysis and interactive data tools that include some of the following listed here. We've done near transit analysis and mapping for elevated Chicago that integrated spatial analysis tools to summarize and illustrate the amount and type of vacant parcels located near public transit stations which includes the Chicago Transit Authority, which is the light rail within the city and nearby suburbs, or the Metro, which is more like this suburban network of commuter transit. We've also mapped tax certificate properties for the Chicago Community Trust, and this involved analysis of properties with property tax certificates forfeited to Cook County and highlighted some of the characteristics of properties on locations where these properties are concentrated. Another project that we recently worked on, and it's it's a it's called the Bronzeville Trail. It's in the south side of the city. It's a I don't know. I think most people are familiar with the rail to trail repurposing of old rail lines. And for that, we've analyzed vacant land near the project and built a comprehensive inventory of vacant parcels by ownership and near the proposed location of the trail. So I have a couple of examples or of the tools we have built. This is It's kind of like this is an earlier version of what I just mentioned, vacant properties near transit. We have a classification of either privately owned, city owned, starting at the parcel level. We ran a lot of spatial analysis to, if you zoom in, you calculate distance to the nearest station. We also have this half-mile buffer, which can be very useful because you could aggregate these to a higher geography like census tract or community area and find out which community areas have the largest concentration or which stations have the largest concentration of these type of parcels. Um, mm, mm, sorry. So on the next slide, we also have like I mentioned, the forfeited property map. This is a kind of like a combination of forfeited tax certificate properties, which in some cases are vacant, and we kind of simplify the zoning categories to residential or non-residential. In this case, this tool book includes some bookmarks. These are communities of interest, either within the city boundaries or in suburban county. And it also includes some filters. And if you zoom in to, let's say, Englewood here, these parts, the information on these parts is a little more developed. By that I mean we included a little bit more information of on the distance or proximity to transit, which also includes metro, since this project involved suburban parcels as well. And I will share the links, or they're included on the slides for anyone's interest. Another thing that this tool includes, and we incorporated like the land area of parcels. This is something that we are currently exploring. How to maybe I should. Sorry. So for future research of vacant land, like I just mentioned, we're exploring how to come up with an indicator of finding out like which type of, not just the administrative or zoning, but the amount of land that's vacant land that's adjacent to each other for, like I said, redevelopment potential. And an ongoing issue is fragmentation of the vacant land, which even though it's concentrated, you could have blocks that are almost half of them vacant, but across the street you might have only a few parcels that are vacant. And kind of an emerging question from partners lately has been to develop data indicators for vacant buildings, not necessarily vacant land, but it's sort of a continuation of this research. I think that's what I have, and if anybody has any questions.
have a question.
Sure.
Is there a plan to incorporate any utilities for the vacant parcels? This is something that we're looking into doing in Memphis and putting together a vacant parcel map. But one of the challenges we have is kind of that entry level of determining, are there existing utilities? What's the site condition? Things like that.
Yeah, so utilities, you mean like water bills or any other outstanding, like anything that could be found in the properties records?
Like
Yeah,
actual infrastructure, like once you, yeah, like whether that's in the once either that's in the history of documentation, but like if you were to actually go to the parcel, what's the site condition of infrastructure that's there?
yeah. So recently we've been actually working with a few city officials who provided us with water that data at the property level.
Okay.
But it's taken us a while and it's very useful actually.
Yeah.
We made a few mapping tools for including that data as well because
Okay.
each record doesn't necessarily there isn't just one record per property. It could be multiple per property.
Right.
So just to figure out like how many of those do you have per property, and then there might be issues too with how they record it, just to attach to our property level database. But yeah, that is a very useful indicator or data set.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the past, Cleveland used water usage as one of their like triaging or confirming vacancy. So I know, and I'm pretty sure Charlotte, yeah, Charlotte has utility data too, but it's one of the hardest data to get,
Mm-hmm.
or the most rare in our network anyway.
Thank
Was
you.
it the usage, like the stop of usage?
They had like, yeah, they had several indicators. I could go dig it up if they still use that. But since vacancy is a hard concept to know that the city record is right. So
Right.
they had they would take a few, whether it was the USPS data, like they're not getting mail and there's no water and it's on city records, or like how many of the factors, how sure are you that this place is vacant?
Hey,
But I
it's,
infrastructure probably sounds harder.
hey, it's Kira from Innovate Memphis. That was Angelica from Innovate as well. And the project that we're working with the city on or exploring is kind of like a vacant lot activation toolkit. So combining the work of Memphis 3.0, which is looking at the unified, like our zoning and the unified code, development code, and using those two things and all of the data to make recommendations about how vacant lots could be activated. Another step is engaging with the community about whether they agree with that recommendation, and then sharing this information publicly so that developers are able to take it and kind of run with it. So some of the different types of lots include things like flood lots for the climate action plan, community garden lots, and then just development for properties, whether that's multi-unit or single family homes. So one of the challenges with vacant lots for us is sometimes they're formally demolished and there is a existing infrastructure for utilities that was there, but the question is, what is the setup like, and are there going to be enormous costs in reconfiguring that so that it works with the proposed development? And so that's something that developers have spoken about. Having access to that data would really help them better plan so they don't have to do site visits at every single place. But we recognize that it's just a challenging data set and requires a certain relationship with the utilities company. And so we're always just curious about how other folks are doing things. So that's the context.
That's very interesting. That's big problem here in Chicago as well, in the area, the re topsoil remedial work, which it's hard to calculate, you know.
That too.
Folks,
The
yeah,
environmental
it's
condition work, yes,
yeah.
100%.
Maybe we need a new little article summary on recent vacant work. We have some old stuff. Great.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Okay, unless anyone has any other quick questions, I think we're gonna go ahead and move to our final speakers, make sure we have enough time. So I don't know, Kate or Jill, who's going first, but I'll turn it over to y'all.
Thanks, Cole, and great presentations to our fellow NNIP colleagues. Let me just share my screen. Second. So my name is Kate Eichel. I'm from the Harvard Data Collaborative, which is part of CT Data, and my colleague Jill Walsh and I are going to talk about our project looking at sports and recreation access in the city of Hartford, working with youth researchers, as Cole mentioned in the beginning, and then also developing a story map. So I'll talk a little about the process and working with youth, and then Jill will speak and show you a little bit more of the story maps. There'll be another link you can look at when we're done. Again, for those who don't know us, we're CT Data. We're a nonprofit based in Hartford, Connecticut. So a little background on this project. This work came as a result of receiving a grant from the local Data for Equitable Communities program, which was funded by RWGF with support from Urban. So thanks, Kathy and Leah were supporters on that, as well as other Urban staff. And this was a project to do a local data collection topic, and something that was unexplored for us was sports and recreation access in the city of Hartford. Hartford had a department that covered sports and recreation, but was more about like keeping the lights on at the pools and the lifeguards there. And the new mayor that came in a couple of years ago broke out a new department that was really focused on how families are accessing amenities in the city. And so they really wanted to know what are barriers for families to access what already exists. And then also what kinds of programs would meet families' needs in the city. So this was a 9-month grant. So we were trying to do a lot of work in 9 months. And as part of this group, as this project was working with the community. And so we were fortunate enough to work with what we call alumni of our core program, which is called the Hartford Youth Data Fellowship Program that we've run since 2022, which is a data training program for youth in Hartford ages 17 to 24. So we'll talk a little bit about the youth that worked with us, but that's kind of how we were able to kind of get the community engaged so quickly, as we already had these connections. And these are the research questions that we developed in the grant application and then worked on with the community. So we wanted to know about what was it currently available and where they located. And Jill's work with the story map will talk about that. We wanted to know about whether the existing programs met the needs of families and their children and what they're looking for. We wanted to look at barriers that limit their participate, and then where should the city invest or prioritize investments for children and youth in Hartford. So as I mentioned, we've had this youth data training program for several years in Hartford, and we put out a call for folks to join us, and actually had some interviews to get our 6 returning alumni. That's John D'Souza, Noshli Johnson, Samra Muzinovic, Alex Roberts, Jelani Asani, and Tatiana Watson. And so these 6 youth joined us from September 2025 all the way through May, and they met with us pretty much weekly. They were all paid an hourly stipend, and this was an opportunity that we've always wanted to do, which is to build on their core skills that they learned in the program that we've had for several years, where they kind of got foundations in data literacy, data analysis, and data storytelling. But this would be a chance to kind of enhance that in a more original research project. So because this project involved collecting our own data, and we had planned to do local surveys and focus groups, we this is our one of our data capacity builders, trainers, Jackie, we developed some workshops for the youth to expand their skills in focus group facilitation, survey development, and qualitative data analysis. And it wasn't just the workshops we had themselves. We did a lot of like hands-on practice. Like we did some mock focus groups with some surly attendees to help them learn how to manage that. Um, since, that comes up if you're doing qualitative data. And that really helped with their confidence and kind of running focus groups. And here is an example of John, who's leading a focus group. We did 2 youth and 2 parent focus groups. And we had to give a lot of snacks too. That's a key with youth, having food. And so they were kind of had the confidence to work with youth in the city and even with parents. We recruited a lot of community members from partner organizations, public schools, and libraries. So when thinking about doing local focus groups, having those partnerships is really key. And then our youth really helped us diversify the families we spoke with. That was a key part of community engagement. So, for example, one had a connection to Spectrum Sports, which is program specifically for youth with disabilities, and that those families and those coaches really brought a lot to our understanding of like supports for youth with disabilities needed in our city. And so we were so grateful. It's just one example where the youth had these connections to groups that may not be visible to us that we really wanted to make sure we included in our research. So the youth were facilitating, taking notes, and then we did a whole lot with coding the responses afterwards, and that took a lot of time, but that was very fruitful in helping us develop our survey. And so our survey was a collaboration with the youth and their background and their skills, and then also our research team at CT Data helping kind of facilitate the mechanics of that survey. It was an electronic or online one. And kind of going through the whole negotiations for researchers have between, the youth probably had like 100 questions they wanted to ask, and the length of the survey, and kind of helping prioritize our needs. And they had so many specific questions they would love to ask everybody. Another challenge we had was this was launched in late February. And if you're in the Northeast, I don't know how many of you are, but we had like the worst winter this year. And so many things were canceled, and basically families' lives in February this year in Connecticut was a mess of school days and missed days. So it was not a great time to launch a survey, but we kind of were able to bring it back with having some in-person like tabling events where we got families to do the surveys. And again, the youth were great at helping sit with us at basketball games or at a school family event, like a partner event on Saturdays. They really enjoyed that and got into that. And I have some data here on the right about who did the survey and the respondents. I put that up there too because we really worked hard to get families who may not have been represented in other prior data collections, and the youth were helpful with that. There had been a survey in this area a few years back, but it did not reflect the demographics of Hartford. So that was really critical to us. We have held a data walk, data spotlight for our youth programs for 5 years, and it's our 5th one this year. So they presented their findings with all that work about the focus groups and the survey, and then Jill will talk a little bit about the story map we did. So that was sort of at a big open style data walk where we had these 6 youth presenting, and then we had our other youth that are in like we call it now our core program, which also ran from January to May this year. We're also presenting on education and housing. So it's got a lot of different topics for community and civic leaders to learn about. And our mayor came and gave everyone a citation and was very responsive. I think as a negative or a downside of this is that we didn't get to really play up all the unique data we got in this project. And so we need to find more audiences for this information, but we did have quite a lot who were very interested. There's so many findings to share in this that they found. I highlighted a few here. I think the highlight is that the people we surveyed are participating in sports and highlighted that. But lack of awareness and how to register and communication is a big challenge. Transportation is also a barrier. And Jill's going to show a little bit about how our map can demonstrate where amenities are and where people live. And it was interesting that a lot of the parents said that they are driving their children to activities rather than having them walk or use a bus or something else. And then, as I mentioned, there was a lot about the youth wanting to know about how supported youth felt in activities, especially for their identity. And we found overwhelmingly, and this was in the focus groups too, that families who were participating in sports felt that their child was being very supported. I'd say especially in disability community, there was a lot who really felt like they were finding the supports they needed in Hartford. They just wanted more of them. So that was good news for Hartford. And just now the question is getting more families to access those programs that already exist or fund more of them. So I'm going to turn it to Jill, and she's going to show our map.
Thanks, Kate. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I will really quickly walk through the story map overall. So we wanted to have like a quantitative data, like a place to bring data from different sources together to kind of complement the survey findings and to be used for advocacy work. And with that advocacy lens in mind, we needed it to be like super flexible and like any group can go to the story map and find data that helps them in their advocacy work with like their lens. So we needed like neighborhood level information. We needed information by different age groups for different like sports organizations that serve like younger children or older children. And then we also needed like a place to keep all this information in a narrative format. So that's why we decided on a story map setting. And one of our key findings, so we looked at like where parks are and where sports facilities are within the parks in relation to where people live in Hartford. And so we found that about 63% of children under 18 are within walking distance of a park, which we defined as a quarter-mile buffer around the park. But it was very uneven by neighborhood. So some neighborhoods, more than 9 out of 10 children were within walking distance of a park, whereas other neighborhoods, a quarter or less than half were within walking distance. And as Kate mentioned, there were definitely transportation barriers as well. And even within that walking distance group, there were differences between like, are you walking distance to kind of a passive open space or a forested area of a park, or are you walking distance to like the soccer field where you need to get to? So we have our first section just kind of gives an overview of each neighborhood. We got data from the City of Hartford Department of Public Works, and then the City of Hartford also has an aerial data set of open space, so we combine those together. And then we walk through each neighborhood, highlighting what's there. Then we have a facilities section. This is a heat map showing like where the fields and facilities are, and we break that down by different facility types. And then we have an accessibility like walking distance and transportation section. So this is showing those quarter-mile buffers, and immediately like some gaps jump out. And we also looked at that. This is for like parks overall, and then that's half-mile buffer. And this is within the sports facilities themselves. So you can see like in some parts, they're like really concentrated in one section of the park. And then we looked at transportation. So one finding from this is that unsurprisingly, bus routes are oriented towards downtown Hartford and the parks are not. So that creates a major barrier in getting to the parks. So we have all these data layers, but we used an example of like, if you live here, you're just outside walking distance, especially if you have younger children. But the bus routes don't really take you towards the park. So to get to a bus that does go to a park, you do have to walk pretty far before getting on the bus. And then really quickly, we have, we use census block data for this to get that really granular level. And so we calculated how many children under 18 and by different age groups, and then also by race ethnicity, how many people are within walking distance. And this highlighted some significant gaps. And we've heard from some community organizations already that like they'll be able to use these maps to show like this gap, for example. Like we know that the riverfront park is here and we know that people live here, but it's a little more stark to see the visualization. And then very lastly, at the end, we have a map with all of the layers included so people can explore and click on a census tract for more information and then use that like images of the layers that they're interested in. So I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, we've already gotten some questions from providers about how to use the map and presenting other places. So we're trying to bring it to new audiences.
Well, does anyone here have any questions? I know we're almost at time.
Justified, I think I walked alongside CT Data on this, so I'm love this project. And we're thinking about putting like a brown bag together webinar together with the youth presenting that maybe would be internal to NNIP and the local data grantees to hear directly from them about their experiences and how the findings are different when young people do the work. So yeah, if you have other examples of youth engagement, definitely send those along to us too, and we can figure out how to highlight it as a group. Or maybe a camp session, and maybe a camp session.
Okay.
Quiet day.
Sorry, what'd you say, Kathy?
It's a quiet day.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, if no one has anything else before we jump off, yeah, just want to thank all our presenters. All of these were fantastic, and we'll definitely be following up with how we can, yeah, expand on some of this work. So, yeah, we will post this recording to the NNIP YouTube channel, along with slides on the platform and any links that are relevant in the announcement that we put to the forum as well. But yeah, really appreciate everyone coming out today, and a special thanks to all our presenters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.